Good morning, everyone. My name is Caroline, and I would like to introduce the speaker of the day. Karl Mueller has been working cross-culturally for more than 30 years. He has devoted his time to community development, including building intercultural partnerships and leadership development. Karl has a heart for the African continent, where he has been 40 times. I am glad that I'm taking this introduction because this is the second time Karl is visiting Power Monday to share with us on leading during the times of change. The last time I attended the Power Monday session facilitated by him, he led us and shared a lot about selecting leaders. And I want to say that I learned something from him because I was just newly into my new role at Community Health Impact Coalition, and I learned basics on how I should behave as a leader. Thank you, and Karl, you are welcome to share with us.
Thank you, Caroline. Thank you, Paul Peter, for inviting me to be with you for these next few minutes. And I'm just looking at some of the names on the screen, and I recognize some of your names from the courses that we've been doing in the last few months. And so I'm glad that I didn't scare you away from joining us. So Paul Peter asked me to talk a little bit about leading in times of change. And so I don't, I've got a lot of things to talk about. We don't have a lot of time, but we will get as far as we can go. And I'm happy to share my PowerPoint with all of you. And I'm sure that after the session, I can send it to Paul Peter, and he can make it available to you if you want it. And that'll include stuff that we are talking about, and some things that we probably won't get time to do. I think all of us understand that we are in a significant time of change in the world today. I know here in North America, but also in Europe and in Africa and in Asia, there has just been a significant amount of change culturally. Obviously with COVID, all those kinds of things, and have brought change. And it's a difficult time, it's a challenging time for those of us who are leaders to lead our people, whether it's in the workplace, whether it's in a church or a ministry or an NGO. It's a challenging time for us. And we don't have a lot of time today, so I want to do what we often do in the classes that I facilitate, is we want to start thinking about a framework for change and how to lead it. And those of us who call ourselves Christians, I'm hoping that we can build a more of a Christian perspective on how to look at some of the things that we are encountering in this turbulent time in many ways. And so I want to start out, let's see, Paul Peter, do I have permission to share my screen, or?
You can.
I can, okay. Let's see, what is it that you're seeing? Just a minute, I just want to be sure. Are you seeing this cover screen of an African gentleman that says DAI on it? Yeah, okay, good. Well, yes. I want us to start our discussion this morning, and I'm hoping that we can have a discussion by looking at a very brief little story. And because this story in many ways describes the dilemma that many of us who are in leadership or who are working in organizations, in churches, etc., are facing. Somebody willing to read this story to us? Just quickly. Don't be scared.
Nashami.
Go ahead, Caroline. I see you changed from mute. Go ahead.
All right. A fishing story, a dilemma. Jose and his son Manuel are fishermen. For years, they have rowed their small boat to a certain part of the lake, which the fish just seem to love best. That's where they were always able to get the greatest catch of fish. But recently, things seem to have changed. Manuel, in particular, noticed that the fish didn't seem to be biting as much as they once did. He commented on this to his father, Jose, but Jose didn't seem to be that bothered. He simply replied, "Fear not, my son. The fish are here. We just need to use different bait." So they used some different bait, but week after week, they were only catching smaller and smaller numbers of fish until one day they caught no fish at all. Manuel tried to tell his father that other fishermen are having much better luck a few kilometers away and suggested that they move the boat to a different part of the lake. But Jose would not move. His response was, "My son, I love this corner of the lake. We've always fished here, and the fish will come back." Neither Jose nor Manuel knew that the fish would never come back. They'd never come back because water had become so polluted in that part of the lake that they just couldn't survive. But Jose still came back to that same spot after that day after, because he loved that part of the lake and because, as he told his son, Manuel, "We've always fished here."
So let me ask you a couple of questions. And first of all, what's happening in the story? What do you see happening in this simple little story? Anybody, go ahead. What is happening in this story?
So there's resistance to change.
There is resistance to change. Yeah. What else? What else is happening?
Where is talking but muted.
Oh, yeah.
Unmute.
I was saying I personally see resistance to change with the mentality of believing that things should always remain the same, even when times are changing and the environment and the conditions are changing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes, good good morning. What happened is that the fishermen didn't realize that the fish are depleted and they continued doing the same things and nothing was happening.
Send you the link.
Yeah, exactly. Caroline says this in the chat. She's wanting to do the things the same way despite changing times. I'll just share, let you look at the story again.
Breathe, Anthony.
Okay, thank you. I agree with all those who have shared, but I'm also looking at it from another end. That this is, the man is looking at this is a child. I am a father. I know more than him. So what are you trying to tell me? So I'm seeing a father who is just telling the child, "Hey, I'm older than you. I know more than you. Thank you."
Yeah, there's some of those dynamics there as well, as the father or the elder, the older person is kind of saying, "Hey, I know better than you. We have always been here. We don't need to change. We just, let's just keep doing the same thing." Let me ask you another question. Why does, and you started this a little bit, is why does Jose not want to move to another part of the lake? Any other thoughts about that?
Because of force of habit.
Because of force of habit. Yeah, that's definitely part of that. And I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, so please forgive me. Wakwea said the fear of the unknown. Yeah, lots of times that's I'm sure Jose had some fear of the unknown. Yeah, Jane says familiarity. He'd always gone to this part of the lake. He loved this part of the lake. It was the way, you know, he probably grew up fishing in this part of the lake and he was just comfortable. Not wanting, Nancy says, not wanting to move away from our comfort zone. And all those things, every one of those things are true. And part of the reason why, some of the reasons why Jose did not want to move. So let me ask you this, what do you think will happen next? If you were going to write the next page of the story, what do you think was going to happen next? Yeah, Christine just talks in relation to the last question. It's just the familiarity with the status quo. Yeah. What do you think? What do you think is going to happen next in the story? There's lots of opportunities here. What do you think? Jane says, yeah, if they keep a complete loss of livelihood. Probably if they keep doing this, there will be a complete loss of livelihood. They will lose everything, Christine says. Anthony says they will quit the business due to low, yeah, they just aren't going to, if they stay there, they're not going to be successful. Now, Jabichi and Melvin say they may very well choose to move to another part of the lake. And that's a possibility as well. Any other possibilities to how the story will end?
I'm looking at the son going his way, Manuel going his way to try his luck.
Yeah, and maybe that's the third scenario. The first scenario is they just stay there and eventually lose their fishing business because there are no fish. The second possibility is that they both move to another part of the lake where there are fish. But the third possibility is that maybe Manuel will go to fish in one area and Jose, the father, will stay where he is, that there will be a split in the business. Yeah, Wakiwa says, like in education, this is equated to failure to reform, which, yeah, in broader society leads to unemployment and to hunger. So I think, you know, this is a very simple story, but I think it can illustrate for us very much some of the situations that all of us are facing in a changing world, right? There's some of us who love to see the status quo stay. There's others who want to do new things. And sometimes what happens is there is maybe a parting of the ways. So change is always a difficult thing. And so let me ask you, is always a difficult thing. So let's explore some of these things a little bit more. So what kind of, let me ask you this question, what kind of changes have you been experiencing? What have you seen in your country or that you've been experiencing in your church or ministry or organization, business during the last 2 or 3 years? What have you been experiencing? And maybe you can answer, you can reflect as well on the second question is, how will those changes impact you as you move forward? So what kind of changes have you seen or experienced in the last couple of years? And how will those changes impact you as you move forward? Any thoughts about that? First of all, what kind of changes have you seen? What kind of changes have you seen?
Hi, good morning.
Good morning, Noel.
So I think 2 to 3 years ago, that takes me back to the time when COVID started. And I think both at work and at at our workplace, we have gone through so much change because first we had to adopt social media a lot. We had to adopt technology actually. Some of the things that we would not do online, we realized that, by the way, we don't have to do them like in the office. We can do these things online. I can run a counseling session online, you get me? And so you realize that it is either you change or you become extinct. So the only way to move with it is to change. Yeah. So we have adopted technology.
Yeah, you've adopted technology. You've figured out that you should not be Manuel. I mean, not be Jose, that in some ways you've got to be more like Manuel. Christine talks about climate change, which has led to a scarcity of food security. Melvin agrees with Noel in saying that there's been much more of an adoption of technology. And so in many ways, we're able, because of what happened over COVID and the changes that happened, we're able to impact more people in different geographies. I mean, even in this room here this morning, there's 43 people here, and I know for sure there's some Africans, there's some folks from the UK, I'm in Canada, there's somebody here from the United States. I'm sure there's a lot more other countries. So we've been able to, there have been opportunities that have arisen because of the changes. What else? What other? Melvin also says you can exchange ideas with people who are thinking along the same lines. Nancy says, there's new job opportunities. New jobs have kind of started up, but at the same time, as Jabichi says, there's economic hardships. So for some, there's opportunity, and for others, it has brought difficulty.
Hello?
Yes, Edda.
Yes, some countries have become totalitarian in their rule following the Great Reset that was planned all along.
Yeah, there have been different. There have been changes in the way government has been done, and I agree. There have been in many countries, there's been a tendency towards more authoritarianism. That has been the case, but there's also been, in the last little while, more people saying, hey, we want more freedom. So there's again this balance. Anybody else? Any other comments? There have been challenges in Lillian says challenges in managing privacy issues and personal data. Everything's gone digital. I'm sorry, somebody was going to say something else.
Let me just add this. Let me throw in this. I've been thinking and I've been reading online a lot about the generations that we have right now, and you realize that you have to be so malleable to be able to to be able to handle the generation that is in there right now, the Generation Zs. You can't handle them the same way you used to handle generations that have been there, because you realize even at the workplace, their ethics and what they believe in, mostly they'll speak their mind, mostly they're thinking about their time. If work starts at 8 and ends at 5, I will be here from 8 to 5. After that, I leave. And you realize that there are generations that have not been like that. And maybe people who are in their 30s don't think like that. I mean, we're just thinking, as long as there's work, I can be in the office and work. But the Generation Z right now think, no, it's 5 p.m. I have to go home. So even as a leader, to handle them, there's a way you have to adjust the way you your leadership skills are.
Yeah, there's been, it's a generational thing, but I think there's also been a whole shift in worldview and attitude with people from many different generations, and we're having to work intergenerationally. But and maybe this is more of a reality in North America, I don't know, but we've had to work in, like in Canada particularly, We have to work in multicultural environments. In the city that I live in, there are people from over 100 nations living in our city. And so you go into the workplace and you may have 10, 15, 20 different nationalities there. People with different worldviews, different language skills, different ways of looking at things, and etc. So there's just been lots and lots of change in our world. There's been a shift to working from home. I am doing this from my dining room, from my kitchen table. I don't have an office. And that's increasingly true. Let's go on a little bit here and think about a little bit more. I guess what those of us who call ourselves Christians, the question then becomes is how do we look at all of this from a Christian perspective? How do we look at change from a Christian perspective? And oftentimes I think there's background noise. If somebody could, if somebody could take care of that. We have to start thinking biblically. We have to thinking, more Christianly. And I want us to look at a couple of scriptures, very, very briefly, that help to help us to understand and just remind ourselves of what's of who we are in who God is. And so as we look at change, it's very easy for us. There's opportunity, there's challenges, and it's very easy for us to get so caught up in those things that we lose perspective. And so I think as we look at change, the first thing we've got to remember is that our Lord is great and has awesome power, and there is no limit to his wisdom. There's no limit to his knowledge. That's out of Psalm 147, verse 5. And we need to understand that none of this, what is happening, whether it's technology, worldview, cultural shifts, none of this is a surprise to God. None of it. He is fully aware. In March of 2020, I was in Uganda. I was on a plane to fly back to Canada, and the Ugandan government changed all kinds of things in terms of because of COVID, and we had to get off the plane, and a number of things happened. None of this takes God by surprise. He didn't see COVID one day, COVID showed up and he goes, oh my goodness, now what do? I have no clue. This caught me by surprise. We have to remember that our Lord is great. He has awesome power. There's no limit to his wisdom. Romans 11 reminds us that the depths and the riches and the wisdom and knowledge of God, how unsearchable are his judgments, how unfathomable his ways. And I'm just giving you those scriptures to remind me that first of all, as we're facing all of this change as followers of Jesus, we need to remember that we serve a God that this is not taken by surprise. He is fully aware of the challenges and the opportunities that stand before us. And secondly, in Isaiah 46 here, it says, truly I am God, I have no peer. There's nobody like me. I am God, there's none like me, who says my plan will be realized and I will accomplish what I desire. So not only is there a God that is aware of what's going on in our culture and in our world, but secondly, he will not allow his purposes to not come to fruition. In other words, God, in the middle of all this turbulence that we're in, God is still going to accomplish what he desires. I was in a conversation just in this last week with a friend of mine in the United States. And he is so concerned about all of the cultural changes which are happening, which are very the American culture is changing very, very rapidly, and much of it, from a Christian perspective, is not good. And the thing that I keep trying to remind him of is, one, is this did not take God by surprise, and number two, God is still going to accomplish his purposes. Politicians, social media, all those things are not bigger than God is. He is going to accomplish his purposes. In Isaiah 43:19, God says this: forget what has happened. Don't keep on going over old history. In our little story, Jose, the father, kept on going over old history, kept saying, well, we've always gone here. This is always good. The fish have always liked it. It is very easy for us to keep on going over old history. But what does God say? He says, be alert, be present. I'm about to do something brand new. It's bursting out. Don't you see it? There it is. I'm making a road through the desert and rivers in the Badlands. In the New English translations, he says, look, I'm about to do something new. Now it is beginning to happen, to spring forth. Don't you perceive it? I will make a road in the desert and paths in the wilderness. What does this tell us? What God is saying is, yeah, I have worked in certain ways in the past. But don't keep on going over that old history. Learn from the past, but don't be married to it. Don't be stuck in it. Don't keep going back to the same part of the lake. Be alert, be present. He wants to do something new. And it's already springing forth. It's already beginning to happen. We've got to see it. And we have to have the mindset of understanding in our hearts, in the deepest of parts of our hearts, that God understands what's going on in the world. He is going to accomplish his purposes, and he is asking us to join him in the new things that he wants us to do. And what do we need today? We need people, men and women of God, like the men of Issachar, who understood the times and knew what Israel should do and when to do it. And so the challenge for us is for us to hear and understand what God is doing in the world today, that it's going to look different than what it has in the past. But God is looking for men and women who understand the times, who know what we should do and when to do it. Here's a couple of some other introductory thoughts. David Fraser, the co-founder of the organization that I work with, said this: we live in a fast-moving, rapidly changing, unpredictable, and sometimes confusing world. I think we can all relate to that. As Christian leaders, one of our responsibilities is to make sense of this world and bring God's vision and clarity and understanding to those we lead. This is perhaps one of the most challenging tasks of a leader. Peter Senge, who is a futurist, said, leaders walk ahead. They are genuinely committed to deep change in themselves and in their organizations. They lead through developing new skills, capabilities, and understandings, and they come from many places within the organization. The key thing here is that leaders walk ahead, that they are genuinely committed to change in themselves and in the organizations or businesses or churches that they lead. And so the question for us is, are we Jose, or are we Manuel, open to and committed to change? Peter Drucker said this: to move effectively in the future, we need clarity of thought and purpose. That's really a significant statement here. We need clarity of thought and purpose, alongside the ability to respond quickly and decisively. Our church and organizational culture needs to blend into innovation with entrepreneurship. We need to be willing to take risks. We need to do new things, because God, as we saw, is saying, hey, I'm doing a new thing. And we need to become solution-oriented while focusing on our long-term mission. And I'm just trying to think there. Drucker says a couple of other things here that are important for us to understand. We need to combine our values with a spirit of innovation. It's really important for us to have a clear sense of the mission, vision, and values that we have, or that our ministry, our church, our organization, our business has. We need to stick to those things, but we need to innovate. We need to create an environment where the unknown is embraced. And that's going to require a change in the way we do life and work in ministry. And that's really, I can say that's exactly what's happened with us. I am doing things very differently than I was 3 years ago. And here, this is a profound statement that we need to remember. The greatest danger in times of turbulence is not the turbulence. In other words, the greatest danger for us as leaders is not that all the disturbance and the turbulence that we're experiencing in our culture and in the way of doing things, but it is to act with yesterday's logic. It's to go back, it's to go say, boy, I wish things were the way they used to be, and we're going to try to get back to the way that we used to be. I've heard church leaders in different parts of the world say exactly that. As soon as this COVID is over and we're going to go back to the way we did it before. And that is a huge danger for us as leaders. We need to be thinking differently. We need to be understanding that God is already going to do something new, and that he wants to do some new things. And we've got to be willing to walk with him in doing those things alongside him. What happens if we don't change? There's a Christian author here in the U.S. who said this. He wrote this in 2020 during the time of COVID. COVID has resulted in a once-in-a-lifetime change that will affect our personal lives, churches, ministry, and organization for years. The underlying assumptions that sustained us in the past are no longer true. We must set aside our current playbook. In other words, we need to set aside the way we used to do things and write a new playbook that honors people, history, skills, and gifts that God has given us. There is a creative potential for hope and vision that is unprecedented. In other words, we are living in a time when there is significant opportunity for us to do something new. God wants to do something new. Yes, there are challenges. In many parts of the world, there's I live in a country that is very secular. Less than about 5% of the population in our country goes to what we would call an evangelical or a Christian church. There is a significant amount of pressure to not say certain things, to not vocally share your faith, to et cetera, et cetera. But there is opportunity here that has never existed before, and we need to be thinking of new ways in which to work together with God to accomplish his purposes. And I think that's the same way in many, many countries. I was in Uganda in August, and I heard this kind of stuff. I was in Thailand in September, and I heard very similar kinds of things from Christian leaders. There's new ways that we need to do it, but it's going to take change. It's going to take doing things differently than we used to do it before. Any thoughts or comments before we go on? I'm trying to also think through where we need to go from here, but any thoughts or comments? Is this making sense to you?
Hello?
Yes, Edda.
Yeah, thank you very much for your ideas. I was listening to, I've been in the pro-life movement for 2 decades, and there's the Respect for Marriage Act that has come out in the United States, and yet it is everything except respect for marriage. It's about nobody can say anything against same-sex unions, and this transgender ideology has taken, it's like accelerating at exponential speed. So when you have countries like in the United States where it will now become illegal to say anything against same-sex unions or comprehensive sexuality education, which is teaching children that gender is a spectrum and you can be a boy today, this is child abuse. And this is what they are trying to impose into Africa. And the saddest thing in the Western countries is that the churches have also been corrupted to say these things, that marriage, gender is a spectrum. They're even having what they call drag queens giving sermons in church. These are men dressed as women. So the world is completely upside down. And us as lay Christians, I think we have to take over, because the church is not talking about the deepest thing about humanity, and that is marriage, which is the bedrock of the family, which is the basic unit of society. I think as Christians, we just need to accept that our Christian leaders are not going to lead us in this, and we are alone. And so we need to take a stand and be ready to die for our faith, to be ready to die for Christ.
Well, I think we do need to. I agree that there's a lot of things that are going I think, first of all, there's cultural imperialism, that Westerners are often trying to impose their values on Africa, Asia, and Latin America. And that's wrong. Secondly, I do think that there are definitely forces in Western culture that are against the traditional view of looking at things like marriage and other kinds of things. I would disagree with you that it's, because I live in this part of the world, I would disagree with you that it's illegal for us to say, for those of us who maybe have different views, for us to say things that go against the grain of culture. It's not illegal. The other thing I would say is there is a tremendous opportunity for followers of Jesus to have a positive impact in these areas. The challenge is simply this, is that, in fact, there are lots of evangelical, charismatic Christian churches that are holding on to marriage values, etc. It's not, there's thousands of them that are. But the other thing is this, and this isn't really the forum to speak about this specific issue, but I would say my question is always this: yes, there are challenges that go against the values that are biblical, that have been held biblical for a long period of time. But the question is this: is how do we respond? And it's not by I would say it's first of all by living out our faith. The challenge in the United States, and this could very well be in Africa and other parts of the world, is that so many of those people who are speaking against the kinds of things that you've mentioned are also the ones who are protecting sexual predators, who are abusing women. The leaders of the Southern Baptist denomination have been a huge cover-up. People like Rabbi Zacharias and others who have been many well-known people who have been speaking against things but living exactly the opposite, and that's called hypocrisy. And until we speak with our actions in how we live out our faith, all the words that we can say are as clanging cymbals and don't, in fact, just go against, are dangerous to, well, not dangerous isn't the right word, but they don't help our cause. We've got to start living in our daily lives. We've got to, the way that Jesus wants us to live. And when we do that first, then we can speak with some authority. But if we, the Southern Baptist leaders, all were in favor, or many of them were in favor of Mr. Trump, who is a sexual predator. And at the same time as they're speaking against transgender and gay marriage and all those things, they were protecting and still are people who have pastors who have abused their people in their church. And so that kind of hypocrisy does nothing to help us effect the kind of godly change that needs to happen in our cultures. And we could go on about this very topic, but it's the truth is we are oftentimes we speak but live very differently, and as long as we continue to do that, we have no chance to be prophetic in our society. Melvin says, is there something like a change model
in the chat?
In the chat, is there something like a change model in or a canvas? There's something like a biblical change model that we can look at. Well, there's a wide variety of changes. Let me, we've got like 13 minutes left. Let me go to a couple of slides that will maybe hopefully help us to understand a few things or begin to give us some insight. All of this I can send you in the PowerPoint. But there's a couple of things that we need to think about real quickly. First of all, not everybody responds to ideas about change the same way. Some are like this horse who want to do anything but change. Others are like this fish who want to change, right? They're eager for change. And the second thing that we need to realize is that people look at change differently. Very, very, very few people are really innovators, are really open to change, and this is the case in churches, in organizations, in businesses, everywhere. Only a very small percentage of people are open to change. 2.5% are going to be like that fish and jump. As time goes on, it takes a while for change to be accepted. The innovators, there's early adopters, and we can talk about what all those things mean. You'll get the meanings of that in the PowerPoint that I will share with you. But the reality of the matter is that we all accept change differently, and change has got to do with more about emotions than it does about facts. Jose didn't want to move from the fishing, not because of facts, not because they were catching more fish, he was catching less fish, it was facts, but because of emotion. And we need to, as people who are change agents, we need to understand that not everybody is going to embrace our change. In fact, most people initially will not. And about 16% of the population, and this is a global kind of a thing, are going to resist change. And so I hope that even this little diagram here with the explanations that you'll get in the PowerPoint will help you think through all of this. There's very, very few people in the world who really are excited about change. And so what can we do for those of us who are change agents? I think we need to, and we run across people who are opposed to change. One is we need to listen to objections and to seek to understand the reasons for their opposition. People will resist change. In other words, we need to listen to understand. People will resist change for all kinds of reasons. It's not their idea. They don't like doing things differently. They're concerned about how things will affect others in ministry or the organization. They don't think that change will be acceptable. Sometimes people don't accept change because they will just resist no matter what. Some people will try to derail the change. They're going to fight against it actively. And so sometimes one of the solutions that we had about the fishing story was that sometimes maybe Manuel and Jose will separate. And so sometimes we need to realize that we have to go separate ways, because the change is not going to happen. Also, there's some of you have been in our classes, we've talked about different kinds of leaders. We have to explain change to people on different levels. Designer, developers, entrepreneurs, they need to see the vision for the change. Motivators, people who are salespeople who understand how to communicate, they need to see the change at an emotional level. Team players, or those who are in church terms, pastors, gifted wise, not position wise. We need to talk about relational issues and how those things the change is going to affect those things. Implementers, those people who are like the accountants, the guys who understand how to take something from step A to step Z. We need to explain change to them on an intellectual and practical level. In other words, we've got to figure out how to communicate change to the people that we are leading. And then we don't have the time to talk about this, but I want to end with one other thing here real quick. So how do we in an organization, in a church, in a ministry, how do we lead the change process? Well, here's just a few brief, very some points that hopefully will help. We need to, first of all, do an honest assessment of who we currently are. Very rarely are particularly Christian churches and ministries, and we're going to say honest about themselves. We need to do an assessment of who we really are. What's our strengths? What's our weaknesses? Where are our opportunities? What are the threats to our organization? We need to understand who we are, age-wise, giftingness-wise, all kinds of those kinds of ways. We need to help us think about who we would like to be. It's not just who we are, but what is God calling us to? Who do we want to be? We need to create very clear mission and purpose statements that, sometimes people go, well, I ask somebody, a pastor or a leader of a business or whatever, what's your mission? What do you exist? And they talk on for hours. It's clear they don't know what really God's called them to. We need to have clear, concise mission statements. What are we doing? How are we doing it? Why are we doing it? You can say that in 35 words or less. We need to think about who we would like to be. We need to create a clear, concise statement of values. Who are we? Not do what we're doing, but who are we? What are those things that are very important to us? It's clear from what Etta was saying, the whole issue of marriage is very important to her. That would be something that would be in her value statement. They're the guiding principles that determine who we are as a church or ministry or business or organization. We need to have, in a time of change, we need to have a real clarity on our mission, vision, and values, because they can form a border, a boundary that will determine what God has called us to do and how we will do it. We are not going to be effective in turbulent times if we don't have this very, very clear. We need to think and pray about what has to change in order for us to move forward. This is all a process that takes time. We have to ask, what has to change for us to be effective in the days ahead? What do we need to do differently in order to grow in effectiveness? How do we lead? Noel was saying things about the different generations and expectations, etc. What has to change for us to be effective? We need to forget about boundaries and lines that have worked in the past, because it's a new world. We have to remember that it's okay to experiment, to fail, and to bring new people into the visioning process, into the change process. It's not only the old guard who should be leading the change. We need ideas from all generations, from very different kinds of people. We don't allow the idea that we have never done this before to stop us from trying to do it. Nothing will change if we only do what we have done before. We need to look for new opportunities and ways that we can fulfill the mission God has called us to while staying true to our core values. What do we need to do? What opportunities are there that we can fulfill the mission God has called us to while staying true to our core values? And then we need to communicate clearly and often to those that we're leading about how we're going to do this. We have to make it simple. We have to make it clear. We have to communicate often. Rick Warren, who was a pastor in the United States, the large church, said this: people forget every 28 days. So at least once a month, you've got to remind people of your mission and your vision and your values. You can do that in creative ways, but you have to communicate clearly and often. We have to remember that change is more about feelings than about facts or information. Jose didn't want to change, not because of facts, but because of feelings. We need to clearly connect any change we make with our mission and values of our organization. We need to paint a picture of what the future will look like. We need to build a team of people who are committed to seeing that change happen. We need to listen and empathize with those who are struggling, because it is about emotion. It's about history. It's about, I was the founder of a ministry that grew significantly. God led us to leave. And when we came back, the new leaders had done some things differently, right? We need to empathize with those who are struggling, because some of those things thought, why are they doing this? We need to empathize. So I know this is awfully quick, and it's already got 2 minutes left. I hope that at least some of the things that we have that I've just touched on briefly have been helpful. Remember that God has lots of wisdom. He knows what's going on. His purposes have not changed. And he wants to work with us together to do the new things that he wants to do in these turbulent times. And there are ways. I just ran through some very, very, very brief kinds of things, overviews of some of the things that we need to be thinking about. So that's my time is up. Thank you so much for the time that you spent, and I will send my entire PowerPoint to Paul Peter, who can then I'll do that tomorrow morning my time, and so that he'll be able to distribute it to you as he wishes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Karl. We can call one of us, Dr. Melvin, to pass a vote of thanks, and maybe we move to the next level.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul Peter. Karl Mueller, first of all, I must really thank you for a wonderful presentation. And my takeout is that in turbulent times, we need to keep on communicating our mission, our vision and mission. And our mission is defined as what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how we're doing it. And additionally, I want to thank everybody for coming here today. I want to thank OPP and Noel for always being in the background. And I'd like, when I finish this vote of thanks, for Noel to explain to us about the meet and greet we have next Saturday. So, Karl Mueller, you've given us a lot of food for thought. We need to go out there. We need to demonstrate what we have learned today by being the change that we seek in these very turbulent times. So I will now hand over to Noel, who will tell us about the meet and greet, and who will end with a word of prayer as she releases us. Over to you, Noel.